When it comes to India, the cathedral media of both India and the West gives the casual viewer or reader the image of a country that includes several rape capitals and that has a stringent and severe domestic violence problem. But what if most of that is not really true? What if the domestic violence issue is significantly more complex than you are made to believe? What if India's domestic violence problem is actually one of misuse of legislation fueled by ideologically driven zealots? This is what Martyrs of Marriage is about. Let's explore. Hello everyone and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Alright, so I had the privilege of watching Deepika Narayan Bhardwaj's movie Martyrs of Marriage as the movie is touring India right now. But before I even say anything about this movie, I need to remind everyone that India is a federal republic that is almost as big as the European Union in terms of surface, but with a population that is almost 3 times as big as the European Union. The EU has around 510 million people. India has around 1.32 billion people. This is significant in several ways. One way in which this is significant is that if 1% of the populace is a victim of something, that means 13.2 million victims. That means more than the population of Austria and Slovenia combined. At least 500 million people in India are married. Half of these people, the male half, and their families are potentially at risk because of Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code, which can easily be, and routinely is, abused by women. And this is what Martyrs of Marriage is about.
Law like 498A, Domestic Violence Act, the law is framed on the assumption whatever a woman is saying to be treated as a evidence 100%.
Now, I don't want to go too much through the history of this because I'd love for you all to buy and watch the movie when it comes out online, but basically, Section 498A is one of the many laws in India that can be argued that were enacted with good intentions. Now, personally, I don't buy that argument, but it's definitely a legitimate point to make. However, in time, the trade-off of the law became increasingly hard to accept. And what I mean by that is that the costs, not just financial, but societal and moral costs of enforcing the law, have started to severely outstrip the perceived or presumed benefits. 498A was meant to protect women from whom dowry was being required by either the potential husband's family or by the husband himself. What turned out to be, in practice, was a highly destructive legal weapon in the hands of disgruntled wives to harass and persecute both their husband and their husband's families using the violence of the state. Now add to that the vested interests in keeping the status quo, the lawyers, the police, and of course the NGOs who get more money from their usually Western backers if they can keep up the charade. Martyrs of Marriage looks very closely to the societal, social, moral, and human cost of all of this, and I gotta say, it ain't pretty. The movie basically follows 3 big stories of 3 separate families that have been victims of this law, and in between the stories there are various other subplots of other stories and expert opinions from judges, former judges, activists, therapists, and all the people who have to clean up the mental mess after such cases, and of course other less relevant stakeholders of this issue. The movie is very hard to watch, especially the portions where the suicide notes are being read. The notes of men who've chosen to take their own lives to get both themselves and their families, including their children, rid of the undue burden placed upon them at the behest of a usually violent woman and enacted by a rigid and tone-deaf state apparatus. Around 60,000 men commit suicide each year in India solely because of endless persecution and extortion made possible by 498A. It's a bloodbath. Around 1 million people are caught in proceedings related to this law in any given year, and it's not uncommon to see children caught in this as well. There is a case briefly mentioned in the movie where a 6-month-old child was among those arrested in a dowry harassment case. Think about that. A 6-month-old baby arrested for harassing a fully grown adult woman for dowry, likely at a time when the baby wasn't even a love letter. This is insane. And emotionally speaking, the movie is very hard to watch, and I've watched several such movies and have been involved in counter-feminist narratives for almost a decade now, so I'm accustomed to studying such insanity, and it was still hard to watch from time to time. The amount of cruelty one has to be capable of to see infants being arrested and not do anything about it has to be astounding. And yet, the social scientists and other figures of authority in social activism setting are either prevented from doing anything by the feminist lobby or are outright denying that such things even happen. Or even worse, they try to excuse the atrocious trade-off.
He also admitted that he was unable to do much about it because of the force of opinion of the women's organizations.
I object to the term law being misused. I really seriously object to that term, because when you say law has been misused, then you are giving an impression that in this country there is no judicial system which will really scrutinize the cases and which there is no fairness.
But the judiciary itself is saying, ma'am, Supreme Court said it as legal.
So they said it, whatever you see, the whole thing is that if dowry is not a problem in this country, for me, that day it will be acceptable, and we will, whatever, when not a single girl is killed for a motorcycle, for a gold chain, for an apartment.
Yep, that's right. Good Lord. In any event, the movie has very good graphics, much better than The Red Pill, I would argue. It is 89 minutes long, which is great for a single-issue film, and it compensates the fact that it is occasionally emotionally charged, for good reason though, so this is not a criticism, but it compensates that by going slow. The movie is not always in a rush, which is good, but it's something that Deepika could have afforded because it's a single-issue movie. Two criticisms I have for this movie. One is technical and easy to fix, namely that the subtitles, which are very hard to follow because the font is too small. Hopefully by the time it hits online and DVD release, you'll get better subtitles in terms of easiness to follow. And the second criticism I have is content related, namely that it did not follow up a bit more on the undue influence that these social researchers, that is to say feminists, have, and how part of the problem actually is Western funding. Many Western countries pay foreign aid to India hoping it's for a good cause, but a significant chunk of that money ends up in the coffers of highly misandrist organizations who then promote laws, policies, and practices like these that ruin hundreds of thousands of people annually, mostly men, but also many women and even toddlers. Now with that said, I presume Deepika didn't include this in her film because she wanted the film to be directed inwards, i.e. towards Indians, and not offer any excuse to anyone in India to deflect even a little bit towards external factors. The whole movie has this vibe of, look folks, this is our problem in India and we, the Indians, need to address it because all of us are suffering because of it. Which is great. And this is what I presume was the reason Deepika steered clear of mentioning external factors. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'll get a few minutes of Deepika's precious time to talk to her on this channel about the film. And I'm not being facetious here. I'm not joking about Deepika's precious time. This lady is everywhere. Every other week, she's in another part of India at a screening of her movie, answering questions, offering expertise, or giving an interview. She worked a lot for this project, but in the end, it sure will have worth it. I was reading the other day on her Facebook timeline that the movie is being screened for training purposes at a state judicial academy for different batches of magistrates and police officers. This is huge. This is a major step towards changing the culture both in general but also inside the various bureaucracies involved in particular. And as we all know, politics is downstream from culture. This movie stands a big chance of being the great leap forward in changing the whole situation for the better. And I hope it will also represent an important milestone for Deepika's career as a filmmaker. She definitely does deserve it. Now, is the movie perfect? No. But then again, perfection doesn't exist, yet I have to admit it was better than I expected. The movie is a solid 9 out of 10 and a highly recommended title to watch if you want to know more about these things. The movie has a high degree of relevance outside of India too. It provides a good template on how to agitate on a highly contentious and oftentimes politically incorrect topic. Martyrs of Marriage is a solid work in that department wherever you are on the planet. And with that said, the closest screening outside India of this documentary will be on June the 10th in Australia on Gold Coast during the International Conference on Men's Issues 2017. The online worldwide release of this movie will be towards the end of June or early July, as far as Deepika told me last time we spoke. I'll leave several links in the low bar for you to read, and also a link towards the conference in Australia. Especially if you're in Australia, you should consider attending the ICMI to get the chance to ask Deepika questions and also to learn more about these issues in many places around the world. And with all of that being said, thank you all for watching, thank you for your continuous support, and I'll see you soon on Freedom Alternative.
I think women like me, or women who are in the forefront of these rights campaigns, have to make up our minds whether we want equality or we want an extortionist relationship. Are we going to play permanent victims, or are we going to, or do we want to be equal partners? And if laws tilt too much in favor of any one side, no matter what the argument, well, men have done it for so long to women, that's no justification for making laws that lend themselves easy to abuse, because the issue is not women versus men. The issue is what kind of society we want to live in and what kind of families provide stability and a measure of dignity to all.